This is Ashley, and I'm here with Thad Olivent. We are going to be talking about Thad and his involvement at the church. So, Thad, would you like to introduce yourself and tell me how you first came to Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, hi, this is Thad Olivent. I think most of you know me here at the church. I came to Tuscaloosa back in probably, I guess, between 93 and 95, back when Charlie Reed was here. That's the time he was here. It was weird how we come, because at the time I was going to another church. We were going to one over in Union Park where we moved from. That was quite a ways from here. And I was looking for another area in this area. I happened to come by here, and Charlie happened to be preaching that day for the first time. So I went back home and told my wife, I said, I think I found us a place to go. So the following Sunday, she came with me. And actually, when we come in, they have to sign the, what do you call that thing you sign?
The pew pad? The attendance.
Attendance pad, yeah. We signed the attendance pad with a name and address on it. And about an hour later, after the church, here comes Charlie down the driveway. So I said, well, what's he doing coming here? He was bringing a little loaf of bread, because at that time, that's what they give visitors when they come in, a little loaf of bread. My wife met him at the door and says, boy, you didn't let the grass grow under your feet, did you? So that was how we happened to meet him, and she liked him, and then we've been coming here ever since. That was about, I'd say, I don't know the year, but it was back when he first started. We caught his second sermon he made, and that was when we started coming here. And so we've been coming ever since, until Jane got to the point where she wasn't able to come. So that's why I got involved here. We've enjoyed every minute of it. I went to other churches in the area. I went to the First Methodist Church downtown in Oviedo, but that's a little bit too big. There's just, you get so many people, you didn't get to know anybody. So that's how we happened to be coming to Tuscaloosa. That's
awesome. You mentioned your wife, Jane, and I'd like to know how you guys met.
Well, I was out on a date one night. It really wasn't a date. It was just, I guess, two friends she didn't have anyone, I didn't have anyone, and we were just said, let's go to dinner together. We did, and went to a show and what have you. And on the way home, we stopped and had coffee. And Jane was working at a restaurant at the time as a waitress, and she's the one that waited on us. So I thought to myself, I got to come back and check this out. So it was something about her eyes. She had a sadness in her eyes that I couldn't understand. Being as pretty as she was, why was she so sad? Of course, I found out later what it was, but I went back 2 or 3 times a week for the next several months. She wouldn't talk to me. So finally, the lady that was working with her said, that guy that comes in here a week, he comes in here 3 or 4 times, he comes in to see you, so why don't you talk to him? So one night, following that, when I was there, just before I left, getting ready to pay, she walks over to me and says, why don't you call me sometime? So I almost fainted. But anyway, I rushed home. I had the number of the restaurant she was at. I called up and I said, well, this is sometime. And she bust out laughing. So says, anyway, that's how we met, and we started dating. Not then. I didn't get my first date until, oh goodness, this was in May. And I wasn't able to get my first date until September. That's how long it took me to get her to go out with me. I kept going in there. She'd talk to me and what have you, spend time having coffee with me, whatever, but she wouldn't go out with me for the longest time. So finally in September we had our first date, and I don't know if many people here remember, it was the year that Hurricane Donna hit, 1960. And we were supposed to have our date that night, but because the weather was so bad, we didn't want to go out. She asked me would I stay with, she had 4 kids at the time, matter of fact. I married, she had one, the youngest was like 18 months, the oldest was 10. And she wanted me to stay with them because she was alone and she was afraid of the weather, so I stayed with her that night. And it's always been a joke that the first date I had with my wife, I spent the night with her. So that was, anyway, it was like, this was in September. I think it was October. I asked her to marry me, and we got married in November. So I only knew her between May and November. We got married. And everybody says, oh, that's not going to work. You only knew her for 2 or 3 months, blah, blah, blah. That'll never work out. But here it is, 62 years later, and we're still here. Or we were here, at least.
That's a great story. Where were you living at the time?
I was living in a rooming house out in downtown Orlando.
Oh, you were in Florida the whole time?
Oh yeah, that was in 1960. I came here in '58. After I got out of service, I was in this naval when they used to have the naval base at Sanford, I was discharged on a Friday, went to work in Orlando on a Monday, so I didn't have a chance to go home or nothing. But anyway, I was, and that's what I say. I was just going from place to place, didn't have anyone, having to meet her that night, and that changed my whole life from then on out.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in South Georgia. We lived on a farm. That was a hard life, but it was good, and we had everything we needed. The only thing we had to buy was maybe rice and sugar, because we raised everything else. We grew all our potatoes, beans, peas, corn. Had our own meat, because Dad would slaughter a hog or a calf and put it in the smokehouse. I don't think people know what smokehouses are these days. Oh, it's a little house about 12-foot square that you build a little fire in, like out of hickory wood or oak, something that's green and makes a lot of smoke. And you go in, after you slaughter your hog, you hang your hams up or your sausage up, you hang them up in the smokehouse, and you smoke it for a day. That cures it, that it don't spoil. So Mom, all they'd do was walk out the smokehouse, cut off a piece of ham for breakfast or whatever she wanted. We had no problem. But Dad always had meat on the table. He would go out and he would hunt and bring home turkeys for Thanksgiving and Christmas. He fished 2 or 3 times a week, and had fish, but didn't have no problem having any kind of meat, because he always provided for us real good. But they say the work was hard, but rewards were good. So we were poor, but we didn't go hungry and didn't go unloved. There was 6 of us, 5 boys, 1 girl. So he had plenty of help on the farm.
Yeah.
So it was a good life. I look back at it and think a lot of the kids today have no idea what they're eating, how it was raised, or where it came from, how it came into being. They probably wouldn't know how okra or corn, how it grows or anything else.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, so it was a good life. We let us know about things that we ordinarily wouldn't have found out about. So, but after I left there, I went into the Navy, and never went back to the farm again. It was just something I felt I didn't want to do. So that's how that all happened.
Of your siblings, are you the oldest or the youngest?
No, there was
You're in the middle?
6 of us. Sister was the oldest.
Okay.
Then I had 1, 2, 3 older brothers and 1 younger.
Okay.
Out of the 8 of us all told, 6 children and 2 in the family, there's only 3 of us left, me and 2 brothers. The rest of them have passed away. So my oldest brother now is 94, and my younger brother is, I guess I'm telling my age now, but younger brother is 80, I think. Yeah. So but I was next to the last. I was a baby for the longest time, but then he came along, and I wasn't this small baby anymore.
And did you guys stay close?
Yeah, it was a real close. It was a Christian home. Daddy was a Sunday school teacher for years and years. My brother, the one that's alive now, he was a Methodist minister in the Florida Conference for probably 20 or 30 years till he retired. And that was a kind of a story of its own too. He started out wanting to be a principal of a school, and he studied and went to college for years and years. Him and his wife sacrificed things in order to have the money to be able to go to college and get his master's degree in order to get his own school. Well, once he did, he became a principal of his own school. Within a year later, he gave it all up and went into the ministry. And I said, James, why all these years you worked to have your own school, why did you give it up? He says, there's something told me this is what I wanted to do. I guess people call it God's calling. So he got the call to be the minister, and he says, I've never regretted it. Says, I've got a good life, and that's what seemed like I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
So, each one of them had, one thing, my dad and mom were married for 64 years. Jane and I were hoping to match that, but we only made it to 62. But everyone in the family, because of the way we were raised by them, each one of us has celebrated at least 50 years of marriage. There's no divorces, and all 6 kids, not one of us got divorced.
Wow.
And we all at least went 50 years of marriage. So I think that has a lot to say about them, how well they raised us. So.
Did you always grow up going to a Methodist church, or?
Yeah, I grew up and I was baptized in Methodist church, and Never, I don't know of any. Well, we used to visit like on a revival
Sure.
meeting to the Baptist church, something like that. We go for visiting, but that's the only one I've ever been to.
What did you end up doing for work after getting out of the Navy?
Well, I wanted to stay in the area, but so I went out and applied for, like I say, I got out of the Navy on a Friday, but before that I had put in an application that it was called Martin Marietta at the time. Then now it's Lockheed Martin, but then it was called Martin Marietta, or just called Martin, really is what it was called. And I put in my application there, and matter of fact, they answered it and told me to come in. I said, well, I can't. I'm in the service. She said, when you get out? I said, I get out Friday. I said, well, can you start Monday? I said, well, yeah. So as soon as I went into what they call production control, which is similar to what I was doing in the Navy. I was in supply, which you're ordering supplies and keeping the airplanes going and whatever. In this case, I was in production control for Martin Marietta, which you schedule all the parts in, make sure everything is there for the missiles or whatever the building to be done. And I did that till I retired back in whatever it was, back in the 90s I retired.
And then I would like to know, what is most impactful on your relationship with God? Prayer, music, journaling, reading the Bible?
Well, I connect with him through probably prayer more than anything else. To me, there's a lot of power in prayer. That's something I would like, if I wanted to speak one day, I'd like to speak on the power of prayer. It's something that, I don't know if you'd say I really pray. I just talk to God. I just openly say, God, and I just talk to him like I was talking to a friend. And there's so many times that's got me through things that I didn't know how I was going to get through until I just talked to him. It seemed like all of a sudden everything was so much better. I can give lots of examples that just helped me through, that just one prayer, it answered, it helped me through a lot of things. There's one particular one that I'll never forget. I lost, and at the time we were living on a 10-acre area ranch, and it was real big, and 10 acres, about 5 or 6 of it had to be cut. And I cut the grass one afternoon, and evidently I had the glasses in my pocket for some reason or other. And when I got that night to read the paper, I reached to get my glasses and weren't there. I said, oh no, where could they be? So I knew I'd lost them somewhere on the 10 acres. So I got out and I made like a grid. I walked this way, up and down, up and down, up and down. Then I went the opposite way, made like a grid all over the whole property and couldn't find them. And I knew I'd paid like $200 and something for this pair of glasses, so I got to find them. So that night I asked God, I said, I've looked for them, I can't find them. You got to help me. I said, help me find those glasses. And I just talked to him like I was asking somebody to help me. Well, the next morning when I got up, I didn't even think about it. I just walked straight out into the pasture. Didn't go to the gate over the fence. I crawled over the fence, took a beeline right out to the middle of the pasture, and they were laying right in front of me.
Wow.
And what told me to go that way had to be him. So what else could it be? And I thought to myself, well, he sure helped me on that.
Yeah.
And there's so many instances like that I could give. It's helped me in my life. And I think, to me, prayer is the way I connect with him. I talk to him when I would need something. Like when Jane passed away, I was hurt so bad, and I'd say, God, please help me. I can't get through this. And he would just seem like take the hurt away and relieve me at the time. And it's been that way all my life with him. That's how I relate to him, is through that way.
Wow.
I do read my scriptures every year. This year I didn't because of her, the way her death went over. I didn't start it, so I'll skip it this year. But I got a book that's called I think you walk through the life, or you walk through the Bible. It's something. It gives you a passage to read every day, starting with Genesis and ends up in Revelations. Like on January 1st, you start with Genesis 1, and then you end up reading Revelations at the end of the year. And I read that through every year for the last several years. This year I didn't start it because of Jane's passing. I just didn't get into it. But I read that scripture every day, and it seemed like each year I read it, I find something different that I didn't remember I read before. It's just amazing. I don't remember reading that. It's because you skip over things sometimes. Your mind's not there. It's just amazing how I don't really have any. I guess my favorites. I like the Old Testament, but I like how I relate things in the Old Testament to the New Testament, because Jesus would say in the New Testament, as it was written. And you go back and look, sure enough, back in Isaiah or Jeremiah, one of those things, they predicted things that he's saying now is coming true. So it's just amazing. But that's other than that, I read my scriptures in the morning or my devotional, and then I talk to God during the day when I need something, and that's how I relate to Him.
Where do you see God most often in your life?
Where I see Him most often?
Yeah.
I almost see Him every day, really. I mean, I see Him. I see His actions every day. I see Him working miracles every day through not just in my life, but in a lot of other people's lives. I don't really understand what you're getting at.
I feel like I see God a lot through nature, like the miracles of nature. Some people I see God through. Other people a lot. I don't know if there was something in particular that really, when you see that, that's God speaking to you.
Just when I see a flower bloom or see a baby born or anything like that, that tells me, some people say there's no God, but how can you look at those things and say there isn't one? Because just get up in the morning, look at the day, the sun shining, the moon at night. How does those things happen if it wasn't a God? How did those things come about?
Right.
And my favorite, I guess, time of day is either early morning before the sun sets, before the sun rises, or late afternoon when the sun is setting. It's quiet, and you can have a quiet time with God just without all the hustle and bustle, and that's usually when I relate to Him the best, is like early morning or late afternoon. I sit out and watch the sunset and realize what a wonderful world this is.
Yeah.
So that's how I really see Him best, is in times like that.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, I would like to say everybody knows my wife just passed away back in January. I didn't have a memorial for her because she really didn't want one. She was very private, and all she wanted to do was be cremated. Didn't have any fanfare or nothing. But I would like to have told her story after watching memorial for Cheryl Love. I realized then I should have done that for Jane, because she's really got a story that should be told, and maybe at another time I can do that, but it's too long right now to bring it up. So we'll do that maybe at another time.
Yeah,
That's okay.
That'd be great. One question I do have about Jane is, you said she was born or raised in Poland.
Yes.
When did she come to America?
She's able to get out of there after the war in 1948.
And then
she came here, and she learned her language on her own, went to work, met her first husband and got married and had kids, and then I met her, to say, in 1960, so she'd only been here, 12 years, I guess, when I met her. But I was amazed at how well she used better grammar than I did. I mean, she wouldn't say I was amazed at the words she used. Sometimes, how does she know what that means? She's only been used to it. It was really, she always amazed me how well she spoke the English language. She couldn't write it very well because the sounds are different in English than they are in Polish as far as the vowels go. So, like the word I, she'd write the Y, because the Y sounds like my, it would sound like I. So you'd have a hard time reading her writing, but it was amazing. She had an amazing life, and I say it's just too bad that, she didn't come to church. I mean, for a lot of people didn't know, of course, she wasn't able to come to church for the last, I'd say, since about right after our 50th anniversary, which is in 2010. She was to the point of where she could hardly get up and go. She had fibromyalgia real bad, and she's not able to travel or not able to get out and move. If she did, she could only be out for about an hour at the most, and that's it. She had to lay down. So I had to take over at about that time and start doing everything. I started cooking, cleaning house, and taking care of her. We didn't have to start taking care of her so bad until later on, because she was able to get up, get her own coffee, and come out and sit down and have the meal. But around about 6 years ago, she got to the point where she wasn't able to do anything at all. And so I had to start waiting on her, like, except when she was asleep. That's when I would go out and go shopping or whatever. She was, I'm going to lay down for a while. I'd say, okay, while you're dead, I'm going to go cut the grass, or I'm going to go probably I want to go wherever I got to do. That's when I would do it. At the time she was laying down. Otherwise, I had to stay there with her and make sure that whatever she needed, she could get, because she couldn't get up and get it by herself. So it's just too bad that happened. But we were, like I say, it's funny that people said it wouldn't last, but it lasted for 62 years.
And you guys, I mean, from the way you speak of her, it seems like you had such a special relationship.
It was just amazing. I would not, swap it for anything in the world. We just, we did our own thing, and it seemed like the older we got, I think the closer we got. And some people asked, well, how was you able to stay that long together?
What's the secret?
Yeah, well, one thing is, it's not really the secret, but what happened when we first got married, she was working nights and I was working days, so we didn't spend that much time together. I remember going to work in the morning, driving to Martin Marietta. I would pass her. She's working as a waitress. I'd pass her on the way. She'd blow her horn at me, and I'd blow my horn at her. And then when I got home, she'd be asleep because she had to go to work at 10 o'clock, work all night. I'd fix dinner she already had dinner fixed. All I do was warm it up, feed the kids, wake her up, she'd get ready, go back to work. I wouldn't see her again until on the way to work the next morning. We did that for many, many years, and I think that's what kept us together, because after we didn't see each other very often, so when we did, it was like meeting each other all over again. So, yeah, it was actually further in marriage we got, instead of like some people are today, they drift apart, they want to get divorced. I think we got stronger as we got older.
That's really special. Did she always work as a waitress?
No, she only worked as a waitress since she was down. When she was up north, she was she became, when I was, it's close, when she stopped working at the restaurant, she was a manager of Dunkin' Donuts over in Altamont Springs. Okay. She was a manager there for several years. But up north, before she moved to Florida, she worked at Johnson & Johnson making Band-Aids. She worked a machine to run the Band-Aid machine. Okay. And she worked at another place called Zales, I think. It made staples. She ran a big staple machine. She had several machines she'd run on her own. So she worked in a factory up there for several years before she came to Florida. When she moved down here, her husband moved down here, she just got into whatever she could, and waitress was the easiest thing, because they didn't have any manufacturing down here like they did up there, so waitressing was the easiest thing for her to get into. So that's how, but she didn't do that she did that for the whole time I knew her down here, but that's not what she did all her life. When she first came over here from Europe, that's how she got into it. She went to work in the factories up there from 50 to 60, really, I guess.
Hard work.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if she asked her about it. She said, well, she just had to make sure that all the parts was in the machine. The machine did all the work, but she still had to load it and everything else like that. So. Yeah. She was very intelligent person, and that's one thing I liked about her. She was her own person. She didn't have to depend on anything for anybody, because she knew. She just had enough confidence in herself to do whatever she wanted to do, and that's one thing I liked about her. She's very confident. But it's just too bad. I miss her so much these days. It's just hard. But that's another story, I guess, another time. I've never been on a podcast before, so I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just speaking from the heart, really, what I think and what I feel.
Oh, it's so. You have like a wonderful way with words, and I think everyone will love hearing everything you have to say.
There's one point I like to. My wife, my family really loved her. They all got along. My sister, they were like sisters to her. My brothers, they just loved her to death. And the first time she met the family, it's amazing how her and Dad met. You have to keep in mind now, my dad was a very small person as far as size. He was only like 5'5" and weighed only about 140 pounds. And the first time I took Jane up to meet him, when she got out of the car, started walking up to the house, he was on the porch looking down at her and says, "Well, you're not no bigger than a minute." She says, "Oh yeah, well look who's talking." So that he bust out laughing. They hit it from that point on. They hit it off real good because he liked the way she came back at him with a comment, and she was very witty. She liked to do that to people. So that's how they got acquainted. She became his favorite out of 5 daughter-in-laws. She was one of his favorites. He really liked her. And before he died, he died as a result of a gallbladder operation. That's before they had the technology now. They go take a little hole and pull it.
Yeah.
They had to cut him open all the way on the side. He'd go up. She'd go up and spend. Her and her sister-in-laws would take turns spending time with him for 1 week, and one would take. Well, she was there 1 week, helping him, and she was getting better. She was walking him around the room, and before she left, she told him, she said, "Dad, don't you die on me. If you do, I'll never forgive you." He just busted. I said, "Don't make me laugh." But he loved her to death, and they all did. That's how they got acquainted, and he always thought the best of her. So, and anybody she ever met, she didn't make friends very easy. She's not a very outgoing person. She's very, I guess you'd call it introverted. Yeah. And but when she did, you're a friend for life. If you were a friend, if you were an enemy, don't cross her. She'd be your worst enemy you ever had. But we had her and the family had a very good relationship, and they still do. Even now, even her sister-in-law now, the brothers has passed away. They called her and just cried like a baby when she passed away. They just loved her. So, but it is what it is.
It was wonderful talking to you, and I think everyone will love hearing it. Thank you.